Alright, so what we're going to do is going to design a light fixture using a surface for this project. So it's going to be a wall mounted fixture, and basically we'll start with the glass, and then we'll use the glass as our main design concept for the light fixture. So to do that, it's pretty simple. We are working in 3D modeling. I am starting a new project, new drawing. I do recommend saving it from the start, because the moment you save it to a location, you will have a chance of having it autosave. So, let's see if I have a folder that not my travel. So save it in somewhere where you keep all your stuff. I'm going to call it light fixture surface. Alright, so basically we're going to use a spline. We're not going to enclose the spline. All we have to do is just draw as if you were looking from the top view of the light. So we're creating a shape, something like this. And if you want to use dimensions to actually make the part, then you could do so. So we have something like that. In addition to that, I want to also sketch out the bottom of how I would imagine it to look at the bottom. So it could be actually shorter, we have more zigzags, like zigzags, up to you. Once we have that, we start rotating our diagram to see our object in an isometric view. We can use the move gizmo, which is active here. So I select that object. Alright, it doesn't work on solid surfaces or lines. It only works on solid objects. So keep that in mind. But what we're going to do is we're going to move it down on the z-axis. So you can use the move command. Oh, computer's freezing. And I'm going to keep ortho on. And it shows me right there. Ortho is on the distance and what coordinate. It's on z, at negative z. So that gives you a preview which way you're going. It's very good. It helps a lot. Sometimes you're moving your mouse and you don't know which way you're going. See, right now it's 0 degrees. That means I'm on the x-axis. There's my z, negative z. So it tells me positive or negative and so forth. I'm going to go somewhat like this. So I have a kind of a view of what I'm doing. I can turn off the grid or keep it on. I'm going to move it to be more under the original sketch. So I have basically something like this. Now, there's a few different ways of doing this piece. I'm going to make a copy of it first, though, so I can show you guys the different ways. And copy it over here. You can do a loft. So if there's a surface and there is a loft where you select one to the other sketch, or of course if you have more sketches you can add a lot more, but that gives you a click space to accept it. That gives you a somewhat of a design surface. Now if you want to make it more interesting and more controlling, you can add additional guidelines. So for this I'm going to add guidelines. This is a little trick here because not always can you place it in the right spot as you wish. So what some people do, or I do on occasion, I can either try to adjust it to make it exactly what I'm looking for, but it's just not working for me. So what I do is I create a line. I use ortho to reference my point where I want this spline to follow. So I take that point and adjust it here. So now I have somewhat of a path. I'm using a line as a reference. I'm going to do the same thing in here. So I'm taking a line command, I'm taking it from the edge, going down because I know I'm going at negative z, and then I decide if I want to go out. Yeah, I do want to go out a little this way. Maybe I want to go inside more. So I have, oh, see that one's in a weird spot, so I have to delete that, create that one more line. There we go. Snaps onto ortho. So now I have a spot right there where I'm looking for. So I can do a spline. I can add additional points attached to that, and that helps it. Oh, That extra point doesn't help sometimes. You can try to fix it. Oh, it kind of worked. Or you can redraw it again. That's a little tricky part. Yeah, it's not going to work for me this time. So if, if I did want additional lines, I would just add additional points using these references. The nice thing is, once you have those references, it allows you not only to snap those on, create that line, but an easier way to modify your line. So if I wanted to stretch this out, stretch, you can stretch it, not worry about ortho on, not worrying about losing that line somewhere in space. So I can adjust it to a shape I'm more inclined to keep. And before I can loft it now, which I usually do, because I'm not going to make a copy of this. I'm just going to loft it. And to do that, go to the surface and do the loft command once more. Select this top line, bottom line, and plus enter or space. And I either put guides or path. I'll give it guides, so it actually follows these guides and adjusts to them as needed. Compared to the path, a path it completely follows it. There's no it wants to flex a little bit to follow that guide. It can with guides, but with a path, it has to follow that path. There is no other option. So I'll show you an example of that. So actually, I can possibly show it on this shape. I'm gonna make a copy of this, give you guys somewhat of a understanding of that. So I'm gonna do the same thing, loft, but this time I'm gonna type in G for guides. Of course, I'm using the same lines. Okay, sometimes it comes out exactly the same. Alright, I'll have to figure out an example that you guys can get a better visual view of what I mean by the difference between guides and path. So let's say I want this shape. This is a really nice shape. I like it. I'm going to make a copy of it just so I have my reference drawing for future use. I want to ever adjust it a little bit. I'm going to copy it over somewhere over here. And I want to give it a thickness because right now it's just a surface. I can't really do much with it. I mean, I can adjust it, play around, but overall, you can't really do much. So I'm going to go to the thicken command, which is right here under slice. So you select the object to thicken. You specify the thickness. Now, I didn't quite specify what my drawing size was, so that's going to be a little tricky. But if I move my mouse, I can tell, okay, this is 0.88 from the end point to where my mouse moved. Okay, so if I did 1 inch, that should be okay. And you can see the thickness of it. Actually, a pretty thick piece of glass for 1 inch. So I can undo, of course, thicken, and do 1/4 inch. There we go. So now I actually have a material I can use. Now the only issue here well, actually no, that's fine. So let's have that piece. I like it. It's the coolest design ever. Or I want to modify it. If I want to modify it, you can go into a mesh. Convert this into a mesh and modify it based on a mesh. But that's going to be an issue since the thickness of the material will change also. Not to say that glass cannot be thick in one spot and heavy and thin on another spot. That also is okay. But what I want to do, since this is just a glass piece, I also want to create something that holds it in place and attaches to the wall. So I mean, I can really make a really detailed drawing of a box that gets screwed onto the wall and so forth. But I'm not going to go really into details into that. That should be something simple to do. Not simple, time consuming. It'll take a lot of time, but you guys, it's a simple design aspect. So what I'm gonna do is I gotta create a somewhat of like a flat top. 'Cause right now it's gonna be really hard to attach anything to this. It's a curvy shape. But let's say if I had that top piece to be more flat, that would allow me to mount it to some bracket or something. To do that, I'm going to create a line pretty much the whole length of the object. So I select the endpoints on both sides. I actually move this line up using the gizmo. And what I can do is I have two options here. I can give this a thickness the same as the material, and I can loft them together, which is probably a good option. The other option would be I go back to using the surface and extending the surface to match with this top line. So I can actually show you both. So let's do the surface first. Let's add the surface here. I create a line like I did with the other one, and I move it up based on the z-axis with the gizmo, about that height. And I'll have to give it a surface. I go to surface, loft, select the edge, and I select this top piece, and I accept it as is. So this whole area will be covered up with the actual bracket that holds it, so I don't have to worry about how flat and boring it looks. I'm going to keep it as is. And actually, as you can see, it's not really flat because the loft follows through with it until it gets to the edge where it is almost flat. We could still work with that. And then after that, of course, I would take both of these, copy them over, probably union them, become one surface, and then I can thicken them. I'm going to keep that 0.25. As you can see, it gives it a nice thickness where you can grab onto. That's one way. The other way, I would have a rectangle here. So I create a rectangle based on this point here. The only problem is it's not going to be exactly the same axis rotation, so what I can do is just rotate it to get it closer to that, or almost the same. So how I did that, I went to rotate command, I select the rectangle, selected its corner where it intersects with the line, and then I select the other endpoint of that line, that reference line, and that creates the exact same angle. But of course this is way too thick, so of course you need to adjust it to be based on the 0.25, which I should have done in the beginning. So rectangle, D for dimension, the length, if I knew what the length was, 5 to 10, and then 0.25. Nope. That is not the dimension, so I need to figure out the dimension. About 28 is a one big piece. Rectangle, corner, D for dimension, 28 for length, thickness for the, that creates that. Now I can rotate it and actually have the right type of design. From there, I can extrude, or actually loft. We're trying to loft this. So I'm going to select this. It's not going to let me do that. What is it? Okay, so if I can't do this, I have to convert the entities. So what I do is I go to extract edges, and I select the surface here where it extracts the actual edge. So now I have a whole rectangle here, which I can loft out. But it looks like it's going to be a separate piece. I'm going to actually move this away for a second, or isolate this. Right click, hide object, gives me the lines that I had before, and of course they're not one piece into a spline, so I have to adjust this. So I remove the lines I do not need, And these lines are all connected. I need to make it a polyline. So I do that by going P-edit, M for multiple, select all these lines, yes, yes, and yes. And it didn't do it. Let's see this again. If that doesn't work, there's also other option. Edit doesn't always work, so what you can do instead, use the region command, which is in your draw menu bar. Go to region. You select the object you like to region, and that's still doing it. This is not good. Alright, then there's a final way of doing this. I go to back to surfaces, loft one line to the other line, and if I want to add the path, which is these two side lines, I can do that. That creates a object like that, and I can give it a thickness like we did before. So we go to home, thicken. It doesn't have to be anything. It can be like 0, 0, 1. As long as it becomes a solid surface, a solid object. And it's taking a lot of time because it's trying to figure out how to do that right now. Hopefully my computer doesn't crash. It's not responding. Hopefully the video is recording. Alright. Okay, looks like it worked. There is a thickness, you can tell right there. And we go off to finally doing the loft. Loft object. Still doesn't let me do that. Let's see if I can do it this way. Again. Alright, so I have to go with the final way of doing this. So there's always a way. That's just, this one's a hectic way. Which is actually going to surfaces. You're going to have to loft the surfaces together, like we did before. Same with the top. Well, the top we're going to have to do. And what we do from there is we also loft surfaces, the bottom edge to the top edge here. This needs to be exploded at this point. So each edge follows itself. Each edge. And you might have to do this separately. Sometimes the computer doesn't like doing it all at once. It gets really confused. Yeah, it did. So you would have to do it separately. Each edge. Like so. Like so. Until you completely enclose your object. Which means all the sides, the top and the bottom. So it's an enclosed object, but it is all surfaces. So that is an issue, which can be resolved sometimes, but not always. If it's complex enough, it won't work. Command sculpt. If it's simple, it should work without a problem. So if you do explode an object that's solid by accident, you can try using the sculpt command to bring it back into a solid object. Now, the sculpt command, where are you? Is there it is. In surfaces, sculpt. It's by the trim and you trim extend. So you take the sculpt command, select the entire object, you click enter. It's going to run through a wild program through your computer and it creates a solid object. So I do have the solid object. Now if I right click and end my object isolation, I can have my bottom piece ready. So if this doesn't work, which it should work, there's always that option. Once we have that, I'm just going to create a simple rectangle to enclose my top of the glass. So I might have to go to top view, get a better reference view. going to create that rectangle that I think should be the right size with the thickness of that. And of course you can rotate like we did before by moving the object to the corner, and we'll select it, rotate it based from that corner that I just created to, oops, wrong way. Should have had the corner on this side here. This is a reverse rotate. Select that point up to, okay, watch out for the snaps. Might need to rotate around and snap to that. So now it's aligned with the glass. I can move it a little bit forward. It's going to be tricky. Something like that, and I can move it down. Like so. So this will be kind of my object, but to actually make it exactly the right block, let's say the block is empty and it's supposed to have a slot that only fits that glass. What you can do is create a copy of this, and you would subtract from this block this glass, giving you that slot that you need to actually place your glass into. Let's get a copy it over corner to corner. So now it fits perfectly into this glass object with the base bracket. And after that I can start adding things to this, like renderings, material, a actual light inside, and the wall in the back. Let's see how long my video is. Yeah, we can do that. So I'm going to move that over. So I'm going to start out with creating a back wall. It's going to be a pretty simple little rectangle. It's pretty wide back. Move that back. And might actually have to rotate it to align. Yeah. I'm going to rotate this to align with the object. There we go. The wall. So that's my wall mounted light. And now I can finally add actual renderings to it. So to do that, I go to my tools, palettes, materials browser. It pops up to the side, and I can decide what kind of colors I would like to add to the wall, or to the light, or the actual top piece. So I can actually, since I'm not going to search for each one, I'm just going to type it on Chrome. Stain 1, probably a good choice for the brackets. I can type in glass, and it gives me a few options for different kind of glass. Generic, there's clear, etched, maybe a blue glass. And I can type in a wall. See, it's category glass, so now it says wall. So I'm also going to create something interesting. Maybe a tan color. Alright, so I have all the materials placed. I'm going to do a quick render. Hit that render button. It's going to slowly but surely render that area, give me a sample view of what I'm looking at. It looks okay, but it doesn't look like a light fixture. Like a light fixture would show a light from the inside out. I mean, that looks like glass, which is nice, but it's not quite what I'm looking for. So what I've got to do next is actually add a light. And I'm going to create a light, spotlight. To do that, you go to your render tab. You have create lights. I'm going to create actually a point light, point spot. It's going to bring this up. Do you want to remove the default lighting on the outside? Yeah, turn it off. That's what they recommend. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to place this light in the back here. The trick is it should be where your light bulb will be, not inside the wall, but like hanging freely in between the wall and the glass. So right now I'm going to put it against the back of the bracket. Click enter. Oops. Click enter to keep everything. I'm not going to change it yet. It's modify information about the light. I'm going to select that light. I'm going to move it to gizmo and move it down a little bit. So it's like a light bulb in a super bright area right there. Now I can go back to like the front view, which I had before, and I can do that quick render once more. This time it's going to look a little bit different, as you can see. Now, that's tricky because you can't see anything except what that light is reflecting out. So what we might need is a light from the outside to shine at the surface to give it kind of a brightened view. There is always more than just this light in the room. Plus, there's nothing else that light reflects against, so it doesn't hit back, giving you a bright wall. So that's why you can't even see the chrome and so forth. So I'm going to add lines to this drawing. Again, ortho is working with me right here. And I'm going to create a spotlight. So I'm going to go back to render. I'm going to create a spotlight. Spotlight's pretty much like a flashlight. So I take where I'm holding the flashlight, and then I click on where I'm pointing it at, which will be at this surface, this area. So I can click on the object and just accept everything as a default for now. Now I can do the render again, and you'll see the big difference. So now the background is semi lit up. Now you guys can't see on my computer. Alright, so it looks better on my computer. But I can increase the light intensity by double clicking on that light. It's not very convenient. This is just a quick options properties. So I have to customize it and so forth. But the actual more important one would be the full out. To full out properties, which should be at this corner here. The old version had that. Default lights. Alright. Oh. If I can't find it, it's been a while. I type in properties. There it goes, brings that up. And there you can select the lights, and you can take the intensity and increase it. It's right now it's 1, I'll probably put it at 100. And test it out by rendering. Now you guys can really get a good view of the light. There's kind of shades coming out, which might be a little too strong, so you could play around with that and change that light. So I'm going to go about 75 on this one, and I'm going to increase the light strength on the inside, the first one, the point light, to maybe 50. And you can also change the color filter, so that light that comes out, it's not going to be white this time. It's going to be more yellow. And that's going to change the blue glass, hopefully. So you can kind of see a reflective yellow to it. And of course, you can even change the background, but we'll get that. We did that before. We're not going to do it this time. Let's say I change this to 50. So it's still too bright. I'll have to finish up with this like that. Not sure why that's glowing. That's chrome. Maybe I should pick a different material instead of chrome. Do a quick. I wasn't holding shift. That's the thing. So it's. It wasn't the whole box. I think it was the whole box. See, even though it's not a whole box, it's still
I'd say the chroma was initially, because when we did the first render, it showed the box the same color as the wall.
Yeah. Maybe I did make a mistake. Here it is. I'm not sure why it's still doing that. Maybe I do have the. Let's see. I'm gonna change ceramic. I'm gonna do the whole thing the same color. Huh. Still kind of reflective. Not sure why it's doing that. Well, in any case, you can play around with the color because